You look great, but welcome back to the show. Thanks for playing that game with me, man. You're good. You're fun to play games. We got to talk about your new film, How to Train Your Dragon, but you've already had a great year. You've already had a #1 movie. It was a sequel to Den of Thieves.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Gerard Butler finally spoke out in 2025. About 300. His remarks were terrifying. Someone was being transported to the hospital every day. The film brought in $450 million. But mayhem reigned behind the scenes. The eyes of actors were being speared. Simple sights were causing bones to break. He barely made it through the filming. He remained silent about what actually transpired for 18 years. He is now speaking the truth about the riskiest film ever made in Hollywood. On November 13, 1969, Gerard Butler was born in Paisley, Scotland. His parents relocated the family to Montreal, Canada, when he was just 6 months old. However, the relocation was short-lived. His parents divorced after just 18 months of marriage. Gerard's mother, Margaret, returned to Scotland with his siblings. It's difficult to comprehend that Gerard was unaware of his father's whereabouts for the following 14 years. One day, when Gerard was 16, that silence vanished. His stepfather only instructed him to wear his jacket when he got home from school. There was his father. Gerard, who doesn't cry much, sobbed for 5 hours. Summers spent in Toronto, and even a trip to Jamaica with his father, who had previously been a mystery, were made possible by that moment. Gerard was a standout at school. In addition to being intelligent, he was also popular and motivated. He rose to the position of head boy, the highest student position at St. Marin's and St. Margaret's high schools. He then proceeded to study law at the University of Glasgow. It was among the nation's top law schools. Although he later acknowledged that he had sort of negotiated his way into the post, he not only concentrated on his studies while there, but also rose to the position of president of the Law Society. However, he was well-liked. He was vivacious, charismatic, and self-assured. Everyone thought he would succeed as a lawyer. However, Gerard had a significant secret. At night, Gerard was singing in the rock band Speed while his peers were buried in their textbooks. Despite his lack of professional instruction, he sang passionately. He performed covers of Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, and The Doors. He studied legal theory during the day. He played in packed clubs at night in search of an adrenaline rush that books were unable to provide. These late nights were the first indication that law was not his actual vocation, even if he was unaware of it at the time. It existed in performance, vigor, and unadulterated passion. Then came the turning point in the story. At the age of 27, he was a trainee attorney at an Edinburgh legal firm. He went to the Edinburgh Festival and overindulged in alcohol just 1 week prior to qualifying. He was immediately sacked by the law company. It was all gone 7 days before he could complete what he had spent years building. However, he might have been spared death in that agonizing time. Gerard subsequently stated that he didn't believe he would have lived if he had remained in law. His drinking had gotten out of control. He drank till his memory of what he had done faded. He acknowledged that he was headed towards self-destruction. Following the dismissal, he moved to London and fully stopped drinking. After arriving in London, reality set in. Whatever job he could find, he had to take it. He dealt with impolite patrons while waiting tables. He was a telemarketer, phoning and pleading with strangers to purchase items they didn't want. However, selling toys on the street was the most peculiar employment of all. In the hopes that their parents would purchase, he demonstrated how children use toys while standing at market stalls. He was barely making it. He went from being on the verge of becoming a lawyer to working odd jobs and barely making ends meet. Even though it was gloomy and exhausting, he persisted. Although every job felt like a dead end, he was growing tougher as a result. Then an unforeseen event occurred. A familiar face from the Scottish Youth Theatre appeared in front of him. Her current position was casting director. They not only got back in touch, but they also began dating. He was hired as her assistant by her. He was therefore seated in the audition, assisting performers in landing parts while pursuing a career in acting. It was an odd sensation. The thing he desired was just a short distance away. Every day he watched individuals try out. Some were excellent, some were terrible. He had an intimate look at the entire process. And he thought, "That could be me." Each time he distributed a screenplay or set up a meeting, it was him in the end. She once accompanied him to a Steven Berkoff-directed audition for the Shakespeare play Coriolanus. Some claim she set it up. Others claim that in a coffee shop, Butler pleaded with Berkoff for a chance to read. In any case, he put his all into it. Berkoff threw him on the spot, saying he had more energy than anyone else. Ended up in the ensemble in one version. He was chosen to play the lead in the other. However, one thing unites the two versions. This was the turning point in his life. From distributing scripts, he became the production star. He was 27 years old. It was his very first acting role. And after receiving the part, he claimed that it was the best moment of his life as he walked home. As though something inside of him suddenly made sense, he got a small part in the movie Mrs. Brown in 1997. Originally intended to be a low-key BBC television project, Miramax acquired it and made it available to a global audience. It ultimately brought in $13. $2 million and catapulted Judi Dench to the top of the awards season. Despite having a small role, the movie brought him to Cannes. He had never seen the world's attention before. Butler was given a small part in Tomorrow Never Died that same year. His brief appearance on screen was as a lineless crewman. However, that second was crucial. The fourth biggest film of 1997, the Bond movie made $339 million. It lost the top spot at the box office since it opened on the same day as Titanic. Nevertheless, Butler had a personal glimpse of the production of high-budget movies while working on that set. He was taking in as much information as he could. His first true leading part was in Dracula 2000, even though no one was familiar with his name at the time. It appeared to be a significant break. Expectations were great, and the budget was $54 million. However, the film failed. Only generated $47 million and failed to recoup its expenses. But Butler made an impression. Despite wearing vampire makeup, his Scottish accent was audible. Rather than detracting from the part, it gave his Dracula a new, unvarnished, and authentic sense. He demonstrated his ability to physically change himself by bulking up for the role, anything that would come to define his action roles in the future. He starred in the miniseries Attila shortly after I Guilty. It lasted almost 3 hours and allowed Butler to display more than simply strength or fear. He portrayed a mythical warrior in dramatic battle scenes. His ability to tackle larger roles was demonstrated to Hollywood by the production. When he turned 30, everything changed. He relocated to Los Angeles at that time. On November 13, 1969, he was born. Thus, he made the leap in late 1999, had no funds, no fallback, and nothing planned. He had worked in call centers, waited tables, and even displayed toys at fairs in London. He later acknowledged that his initial goal was simply to become famous, but he came at the perfect moment. Strong, dramatic actors who didn't look like your average movie star were what Hollywood was looking for. Appropriate for the time. He got 4 big roles in a year after relocating. In Dracula 2000, he appeared. Croft, Lara, The Phantom of the Opera, Dear Frankie, The Cradle of Life, and Tomb Raider. For someone who had only worked in theater a few years before, it was a quick ascent. The only thing studios needed to see was that Butler could direct a film, even though Dracula 2000 had a poor box office performance. In 2003, Gerard Butler was in a situation that could have been disastrous while filming Lara Croft Tomb Raider and The Cradle of Life. He was practicing an action scene while hanging upside down when a prop gun had to be fired. The issue was that he had no control over the direction of the gun. He fired without thinking. Angelina Jolie's face was barely spared by one of the bullets. He acknowledged years later that everything could have gone very wrong. Insane, he said. Things can still go wrong even with all the safety precautions in place. Many people were reminded by that incident of the potential dangers of movie sets, particularly in light of recent prop gun tragedies. Took an unexpected leap a year later. In The Phantom of the Opera, he played the role of the Phantom. He wasn't meant to be the one. Hugh Jackman was originally wanted by the studio, but he was already working on Van Helsing, so Joel Schumacher, the director, looked elsewhere. Some clicked Butler wasn't a trained vocalist, and he had seen Butler in Dracula 2000. Even Andrew Lloyd Webber was impressed when he sang the song of the night for the first time. He had previously only performed with a rock band, but he trained hard and surprised everyone. The film made over $154 million worldwide, received 3 Oscar nominations, 3 Golden Globe nominations, and Butler was nominated for a Satellite Award. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a low rating of 33%, but the general public disagreed, with over 250,000 people giving it an 84% rating on the popcorn meter. Later, Webber described the movie as an exceptionally good adaptation of the stage production. Butler displayed a different side of himself in the same year. In the little Scottish drama Dear Frankie, he had a quiet, poignant part. He portrayed a stranger posing as the long-lost father of a deaf boy. In stark contrast to his previous roles, the film was slow and tender. He didn't engage in combat. He didn't yell. He just shared stories about soccer and books about the sea with a young boy. The mother was portrayed by Emily Mortimer. Despite being unglamorous, the movie made an impression on viewers. In the end, Butler's character demonstrates his genuine concern by returning the money he was paid. He demonstrated that he was capable of more than just action or horror by winning the Capri Breakout Actor Award. With more than 23,000 votes, the movie received a 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb. Butler's ascent was not unexpected. He took on 2 pivotal roles in 2000 that put him on the correct track. He portrayed Attila the Hun in the miniseries Attila. Despite their initial desire for someone more well-known, producers kept returning to Butler. He worked very hard to take the lead in Dracula 2000. In the past, he also made minor but significant appearances, such as in Tomorrow Never Dies in 1997. Additionally, he prevented a young boy from drowning while filming Mrs. Brown. The Royal Humane Society awarded him a certificate of bravery for that. He was establishing a reputation gradually. By 2005, fans were sharing his interviews and video clips online. Then, the pivotal moment arrived. According to ChatGPT, Gerard Butler became King Leonidas rather than merely portraying him. However, most people are unaware of how bizarre, draining, and revolutionary the journey was. In just 60 days, the entire film 300 was shot at the now-defunct Ice Storm Studios in Montreal. Blue screens, not actual mountains or battlefields. Nearly all of the scenes were staged. There was only one outdoor shot of horses crossing a field. Walls, skies, blood, armies, and everything else were added later. Because blue complemented the Spartans' red capes better than green, the team chose to use it. Although it might seem insignificant, it had a profound impact. Over 1,300 of the 1023 shots in the movie featured visual effects that amounted to 8,731 distinct VFX. The film was shot sequentially, which is uncommon, but it didn't help much when the actors were surrounded by nothing but emptiness. With only another actor in front of him and a sea of blue behind, Gerard Butler later claimed he felt totally disengaged because there was nothing to look at or react to. They brought in Tim Connolly in part because of that mental disconnect. He wasn't merely a stuntman. In addition to performing his risky scenes and training Butler, he also portrayed Leonid, his father in the flashback. Wasn't intended to be a major statement, but it became symbolic. The Spartan warrior was sculpted behind the scenes by Connolly, who then appeared on screen as the story's creator, Gervais. It turned into this weird mashup of fiction and reality. In fact, Butler suffered injuries while filming. He developed foot drop and tore a tendon in his arm, which made Connolly's assistance even more crucial. A father figure who serves as both a trainer and a protector in real life is uncommon in Hollywood. People overlook another aspect of the film: Leonidas' helmet's plume. All of the real Spartans wore plumes, but Zack Snyder took a risk. Only Leonidas received the black plume from him. It made it simple to identify the king in battle scenes involving hundreds of soldiers. He always drew your attention. That plume took on the role of a silent storyteller. It helped you navigate the confusion. Because the battles weren't real, it also helped with editing. The plume gave the team something tangible to track, something that linked every shot, even though the majority of the army was digital. Replica helmets with the black plume are still available for purchase online today. Now, it's more than just a prop, it's a fragment of the history of film. It wasn't your average Hollywood trainer who gave Gerard Butler the workout that made him into King Leonidas. Mountain climber Mark Twight created it, and he treated the cast as though they were getting ready for a mission that could mean the difference between life and death. The entire training period was 4 months. Only 17 of the participants finished the final exam, indicating that the preparation was not quick. Only half of the team was there. Twight did more than just shove them. He observed each rep and each move. It didn't count if it wasn't flawless. Some actors actually performed worse because they were so shaken by the pressure. It was more than just a workout. It was a mental battle. He wanted the cast to trust each other, and he wanted that to be reflected on camera. The 300 workout, the last test, was extremely difficult. First 25 pull-ups, followed by 50 135-pound deadlifts, 50 push-ups, 50 box jumps onto a 2-foot platform, and 50 floor wipers. A 36-pound kettlebell is used for 50 clean and presses, followed by another 25 pull-ups. There isn't any actual rest in between. Some took as little as 15 minutes, while others took as long as 45. However, each round had to be completed in a single attempt. That's the origin of the name. 300 in total reps. The majority of people are unaware that this wasn't a regular occurrence. To demonstrate who was prepared, it was a one-time challenge, and it was successful. Even though that deadlift weight seems manageable, it becomes something else entirely once you've completed more than 200 repetitions. A barrier that some people couldn't overcome. The crazy part comes next. The majority of the time, they never did the same workout twice. Every day, Dwight brought about a transformation. The routines were intentionally random. The actors were never able to get comfortable. They were flipping tires one day. The next day, they were using 50-pound kettlebells to lift until they were exhausted. No comfort zone, no pattern. The goal was to maintain the body's shock and survival state. That's how they quickly changed. It was partly due to the mental strain. You can't prepare when you don't know what's going to happen. It was one of the most extreme fitness regimens ever used in Hollywood because of its unpredictable nature. And it had a long-lasting impact on contemporary training methods. According to Gerard Butler, it was the most difficult thing he had ever done. He actually felt ill after working out for a while. It was brutal, he said, not just difficult. Even though the mental side was as awful as the physical, it altered him in some way. He once claimed that every sweat drop and every repetition lingered in his eyes for a long time. He felt like a lion when he eventually put on the Spartan gear, not a phony actor. He thought so. That change was genuine. Some actors appeared like warriors after starting out 40 pounds overweight. Every day they recorded scores. It turned into a contest. Zack Snyder, the director, even participated. To test himself against the same pain, he trained every morning at 8:30 before anyone else arrived. Then, in January 2025, Butler made a shocking statement. Remember that every day someone was being taken to the hospital, he told People magazine while promoting Den of Thieves 2. It wasn't a joke. He meant it. Despite having a $65 million budget, the movie made over $450 million. But there was a lot of suffering behind the success. He discussed how the set frequently felt like a battleground with co-star O'Shea Jackson Jr. in that same interview. The cast suffered greatly, but it was not visible in the polished, finished product. Butler recalled the injuries as if they were a war reports list. One actor was struck in the eye by a spear. During a fight scene, another person broke his ankle, and it wasn't a coincidence. They were frequent. Insane, he said. Although they were dulled, the spears and swords were still made of metal. Someone was injured when performers failed to hit their targets or moved a fraction of a second too late. The eye injury occurred in a routine scene. That demonstrates just how dangerous it was. Claimed that sometimes he would turn around and find someone already down. The mayhem settled into the norm. They adapted to it. Additionally, Butler was not spared for very long. He survived 300, but things went wrong when he was filming Butterfly on a Wheel, his next film. Pierce Brosnan appeared in a car chase scene. Brosnan did not brake hard on a rooftop as planned. Instead, he used a Range Rover to smash Butler into a 3-foot wall. Butler claimed that immediately following the 300 punishment, it destroyed his neck. Already, his body was disintegrating. His arm had a torn tendon. He had a hip flexor injury. One leg even had nerve damage. Everything was made worse by the crash. He is still impacted by those injuries today. Additionally, it's an obvious illustration of the difficulties actors face when they switch between action roles without any downtime. Even more unexpected is the blood, the fake, not the real kind. The production used only about 2 gallons of fake blood, whereas you would think 300 used buckets. That's all. The gore was almost entirely digital. The wounds, sprays, and blood splashes were all added later using computers. Therefore, there was hardly any fake blood used during filming, even though actors were suffering real injuries on set. It is somewhat ironic. The gore was fake, but the injuries were real. Being another action hero was not what Gerard Butler desired. With over $456 million at the box office in 2007, 300 gave him the opportunity to play tough guys for the rest of his career. Instead, he took an unexpected action. He starred in P.S. a few months later. On a $30 million budget, the romantic drama I Love You earned $156 million worldwide. Hollywood was in disbelief. He wanted to show that he was more than just a swordsman, but most people assumed he would only engage in slow-motion fights and bloody battles. He therefore continued to change things up. The Phantom of the Opera was one of the musicals he had previously performed in. After that, there were raunchy comedies like The Ugly Truth, which made over $200 million. He continued to be pulled back into action by the industry, though. He made a comeback with the Has Fallen series, which brought in over $500 million on its own. Butler had made his point, but critics claimed he never truly escaped the action hero label. He could be the leader of nearly any genre and maintain audience interest. However, things did not go as planned. Erwand Aitzens on the P.S. I Love You set, a moment of humor turned perilous. Had to crawl toward Hilary Swank while dancing around in boxers and suspenders. It was meant to be humorous. He continued to film the scene for a day and a half. Then, however, one of the metal clips violently broke off. Swank was severely cut when it flew directly into her forehead. The wound was deep enough to reveal the teeth of the clip. She needed to be taken to the hospital immediately. In a matter of seconds, the set was cleared. Butler sobbed by himself while still in his underwear. Scared that he had harmed his co-star, Swank's recuperation caused production to halt, further delaying the $30 million movie. In spite of such incidents, Butler's career flourished. Globally, his films have earned $3.25 billion. This places him ahead of celebrities like Tobey Maguire, Jamie Foxx, and Tom Hardy. He has made $1.09 billion at the box office in the United States alone. It rises to $2.09 billion when you include the figures from other countries. It's obvious that his appeal extends well beyond America. Acting was not all he did. Butler went on to become a producer. He contributed to the creation of The Law-Abiding Citizen and a number of Has Fallen movies, which increased his financial and political power. His intuition was correct. The profits from Den of Thieves were sufficient to start a franchise. On a budget of $40 million, the second movie earned over $50 million. Even though his projects don't always win over critics, they always turn a profit. Animation was one of his most surprising victories. Voiced Stoic the Vast in the 2010 film How to Train Your Dragon. In addition to bringing him new fans, children, and family, the movie brought in $494.8 million. He played the part in all 3 movies. Then in 2025, despite the studio's initial desire for a more well-known actor, he joined the live-action version. He was not replaced by the director. It was a wise decision. With $519, 1 cent million, the remake became his highest-grossing movie ever. Butler's stoicism belied his ability to be both gentle and fierce, particularly when he was with his on-screen son. Mason Thames plays the role. His life off-screen, however, has been equally intense. Butler lost control when he lived with a group of heavy drinkers in Venice Beach in his 20s. He drank until he lost consciousness. Although most people believe he stopped drinking in 2011, he says it felt like he was on a death wish and that he stopped more than 20 years ago. That is untrue. The events of 2012 were different. He went to the Betty Ford Clinic that year to get painkillers, not alcohol. After a severe injury in 300, the addiction began. After a surfing accident in December 2011, things worsened. Butler was struck by enormous waves at a renowned surf location in Northern California while filming Chasing Mavericks. He barely made it after being slammed into rocks and dragged underwater. Jet skis hauled him out, and he was taken to Stanford Medical Center. He resorted to taking potent prescription medications because the pain was so severe. He checked himself into rehab when things became out of control. Said he had no regrets after staying for 3 weeks. He might have died in that surfing mishap. However, in 2017, there was another near-death experience. And it was even stranger. Butler experimented with bee venom therapy for muscle soreness during a lengthy stunt shoot for Geostorm. Although it was meant to be safe, he received 10 times the usual amount of venom, the equivalent of 23 bee stings. His heart pounded and his throat closed. He went into shock and swelled up. He was admitted to the hospital. He tried again with a lower dose 4 days later, but the reaction was the same. He was once more in the hospital. That's crazy, even Jeff Goldblum told him. Then the fire broke out. Throughout Los Angeles County, the Woolsey fire spread. Had to leave. His home in Malibu was gone when he returned on November 11. It was all burned. All that was left were ashes and pieces of metal. He uploaded a picture of himself in the wreckage. Behind him, smoke continued to rise. "Welcome to my home in Malibu," he said simply. Whoa. Nearly 97,000 acres were burned, and more than 1,600 buildings were destroyed. His house was still unrepaired a year later. Butler never stopped lending a helping hand to others. He gave the Mary's Meals founder an award in 2010. He has been one of the charity's most ardent supporters ever since. He does more than simply give money. He has traveled to Haiti and Liberia to teach classes and assist with meal preparation. 2 million children in 19 countries are fed by the charity every school day. He joined celebrities like Leonardo DiCaprio and George Clooney in receiving the Cinema for Peace Honorary Award in Berlin in 2020. However, his romantic life has been more intricate. He and interior designer Morgan Brown have been dating intermittently since 2014. They have split up twice. In 2016 and 2020 respectively. During 2022, they reconciled. Butler once stated that he hoped to start a family and settle down by the time he was 50. He is 55 years old and has yet to pop the question. According to reports, Morgan, 54, is sick of waiting.